sitting and doing data entry all day long or for even just a few hours felt very soul crushing. I fell asleep at my desk frequently, and I feel bad about that.
The world is obsessed with fast-track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. Amy Wilkinson is a Brooklyn-based freelance editor and writer with more than 15 years of experience in the field. She predominantly covers entertainment from TV and books to streaming podcasts and has had the opportunity to interview dozens of bold-faced names, including Idris Elba, Kristen Bell, Kevin Bacon, Padma Lakshmi, Sutton Foster, Selena Gomez, and more. Over the years, Amy has held positions at MTV News, Entertainment Weekly, and her work has appeared in publications such as Women's Health, Vanity Fair, Cosmopolitan, Vulture, and Entrepreneur. Amy holds a Master's of Science degree in journalism from Northwestern's University Medill School of Journalism, and she is also a comprehensively trained Pilates instructor. I've known Amy for roughly 22 years. We really got to know one another when we both took internships in Orlando, Florida, the summer before our senior year of college. We spent many nights and weekends discussing our goals for the future, favorite foods, pet peeves, and pop culture. But let's be honest, Amy held down the fort in that area of pop culture. She gave me a solid education that summer on the who's and what's of Hollywood. Amy wasn't and isn't a fangirl. She's an artist, an expert in her craft. Amy has shared her career experiences with me over the years, and her name immediately came to mind when I thought about starting Effing Up. She's the epitome of hustle. However, it's important to note, she's a swan. She's nearly flawless as she glides down the lake, but her legs are working overtime to ensure she makes it across so she doesn't miss a beat. Amy, I'm honored that you're willing to share your journey on Effing Up. I had no doubt you'd make your dreams come true, and it's awesome to be able to read your pieces live. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Deanne. I'm so excited that you called me both an artist and a swan. That's lovely. Thank you.
Why don't we start by you giving a little bit of color about what you're doing today?
Sure. So about 4 years ago, I went completely freelance after having worked pretty steadily at publications and websites in a full-time capacity. I cover predominantly pop culture, but the cool thing about going freelance is I've been able to open up my spectrum for categories and niches and topics that I cover. So you also mentioned that I teach Pilates. So part of my writing now has skewed a little bit more into the health and fitness realm. I also do some business writing, some personal finance writing, which finally using that business degree I got 20 years ago. So we'll do that. So I'm really enjoying being my own boss and not getting mired in the office politics of being in a full-time workspace. And I feel like I'm just doing things that I enjoy. There are definitely moments where it's a slog, but I overall feel very happy with where I am right now.
Because we're here together and because I already mentioned our summer together in Florida, we have to touch first on the internship.
Yes. I like that slight tinge, the internship.
Internship. How did you hope the internship would set you up for your long-term career success?
I don't need to tell you this, Deanne, but I want to give just a tiny bit of context for people who might be listening. You and I went to a fairly small liberal arts college that is founded by a religion. And I would say at the time we were there, I don't remember there being a ton of internship opportunities that were brought straight to us, right?
Let me plainly state it. There were no internships brought straightly to us.
Thank you. I was trying to be diplomatic, but
yeah, I'll say it. I'll go on the record. That was my statement, not yours.
You're like the real one here. So this internship was, I think, one of two I remember hearing about during our time. And I thought I needed an internship just as a resume fodder item. And it seemed if this was the most prestigious internship opportunity at our college, then of course I should try to get it. So I don't think I had a lot of vision of what it would entail and how it would benefit me beyond being a line item on my resume, if I'm being completely honest.
And did it meet that mark?
So it's actually not on my resume anymore, but it was for a while. And that internship, when I think back on it now, feels like a fever dream because I literally got in my car in Walla Walla, Washington with my mom in the passenger seat. We took 4 days to drive across the country to Orlando, Florida, because they insisted I needed a car for this internship. Because what happened was, as you'll recall, I was split between 2 different offices on 2 different hospital campuses. So I needed to be able to get back and forth. So I drive my car 3,000 miles across the country. We're put into a house with 3 or 4 other women that we met during orientation, but don't know at all. It was my first time living with anybody besides my parents. And the job I was given, we had different internship responsibilities, but the one office that you and I were in together, I was given a lot of data entry. You do data entry at 8 a.m. and you're like a 20-something who probably goes to bed at like 1. I fell asleep at my desk frequently, and I feel bad about that. But I'm just going to be honest. And then the other office I was in, they actually gave me, I would say, more responsibility. I felt like I was working more directly with the boss in that office. I felt there was more mentorship going on. So I felt like I was a cog in the wheel in the office that you and I were at. And then I felt at the other office that I was a little bit more important and I was doing work that maybe was helpful. And I was getting more one-on-one attention and feedback. I learned that I need creative pursuits in my work because sitting and doing data entry all day long or for even just a few hours felt very soul crushing to me. I hearkened back to that experience when I later interviewed for a job in marketing analytics, and they were like, and you'll be doing a lot of stuff with numbers. And that's when I knew it was good to have that as sort of a counterpoint of, I've done this, I know it doesn't work for me, so now I need to pivot to something else.
When did you figure out that you wanted to go into journalism?
That came later. When I was at Walla Walla University, I randomly declared a business major, mostly because my dream profession at that point was to write commercials. Like I wanted to work advertising. I had 2 ideas in mind. I thought I could either take a business degree and concentrate in marketing, or I could get a communications degree, which has advertising, PR concentration. So I met with the marketing advisor in the business department, and she very frankly said, the business degree is really great, and the communications degree is the easiest one you can get on campus. And I have a real problem with giving myself the easy way out of something. I never let myself do that. So she said that the business degree was harder, so that's the one I chose. But I did the degree. My first job out of college was actually at our college, which I also hadn't been planning on. Like I'd had ideas of, I'm going to move to Seattle. I'm going to move to Portland. I really wanted to work for Nike. I was applying to all these Nike advertising jobs, and Nike never called me back. So I took a job at our college, and it was working there in the public relations office, where one of my responsibilities was helping produce the alumni magazine every quarter, where I really discovered I like making magazines. I like writing. I like having everything come together, the photos, the design, the writing, into this one beautiful package. So that's how I decided that I wanted to pursue journalism as a career, rather than, I guess I'd kind of fallen into like PR-ish roles at that point.
How did you feel taking the job in the town you grew up in, the town where you went to college?
Part of me was actually oddly excited, and I'll say that was completely due to the woman who hired me. So I worked for 2.5 years for this amazing woman named Rosa. And I had been very hesitant about coming in for this interview. I'd been contacted by a woman at the college who I'd actually taken a class from. She was the head of this department that I ended up working in. I had this role open, called me in to interview with Rosa, who was her sort of like manager underneath her. And I was really hesitant, but I was thinking I just should take the interview. I'm still working at Dairy Queen. You know?
Haven't even touched on the Dairy Queen days.
Oh, the Dairy Queen days. I took the interview and she and I hit it off almost immediately. She was so kind and so warm. She was super into pop culture. We talked about TV during my interview, which blew my mind. And she ended up being somebody who was really, I would say, formative for me in my first few years of my career, just mentoring me and giving me opportunities. The job I took was the title was literally project coordinator, which is pretty amorphous.
Yeah.
And the woman before me who had that job tended more towards photography, design duties. Those weren't necessarily my strong suits. I can design a little bit, but I was more interested in the writing aspect of it. Once Rosa sort of keyed in on that, then she started giving me more writing assignments, and we would then hire a photographer to do stuff. She gave me a lot of opportunities. She really nurtured me, and that was why I was excited in part to take this job, because I recognized that she could be a really cool, good boss. The other half of me felt a little disappointed in myself, maybe. I realized that there could be really great pros to taking the job and staying in town. I could maybe save a little money, which I didn't. Like, let's be honest, I didn't save the idea there that I could, right? And it was being able to take a step into adulthood, but not a leap necessarily. So but I felt, as somebody who is sort of a type A, high achieving, goal oriented person, it felt like a bit of a pause to take a job in my hometown.
When did you start to consider grad school?
I knew even before I finished college that I wanted to go to graduate school for something, which in hindsight, I would give people the advice of like, go to graduate school if you need that to further your career, but don't go just to get a couple fancy letters after your name. That's my side note here. But anyway, I had this idea in mind that I should get a graduate degree at some point. I thought I was going to get an MBA because I had a business degree. And then once my interest started turning more towards journalism rather than business, I really did feel strongly at that point that I should go to graduate school for journalism. I had only taken 1 or 2 journalism classes in college. I had written a bit for the student newspaper, but I didn't really feel like I, A, had the education to really hack it, and B, I certainly didn't have the connections to be able to get a job in New York. You know, I would sit in Walla Walla and think of the idea of sending my resume to an editor at People magazine in New York, and they're like, who is this girl named Amy who lives in Walla Walla and has a business degree? I just didn't really feel like I would be taken seriously at all. So when I made the decision I wanted to go to grad school, in my 23-year-old hubris, I decided that if I was going to go to graduate school, I was going to go to the best graduate school for what it was I wanted to do.
Because you don't do things easy.
I do not. And I do not make it easy for myself, Deanne, let me tell you. So I applied to only 2 graduate schools. I applied to Columbia University and I applied to Northwestern University. Both of them have very vaunted journalism programs. I received a letter from Columbia that they did not want me at all. And then I received a letter from Northwestern that I was being waitlisted. And so at that point, I thought, maybe I need to try for school number 3. So I'm sitting on the wait list at Northwestern, and I think to myself, I should probably retake the GRE. My scores were not very strong. I should probably go back to my recommenders and have them write another round of letters. So I think I got the round of letters. I was about a week away from retaking the GRE, which I hadn't even started studying for. So I didn't know you know, it's like, I'm going to take the test again with no preparation and try to get a better score. So I was about a week away from possibly retaking the GRE, and I got a phone call from Northwestern, and they said, we still don't have room for you in fall quarter, but we have a spot for you in winter quarter if you're willing to wait 3 months.
Oh,
Which,
wow.
yeah, which I had a job, I had no reason that I couldn't wait for 3 more months.
Let's go back to Columbia. How did it feel getting that rejection letter?
Not good. And you know what? I kept that letter because I thought someday I'm going to have this rejection letter. And not like, oh my God, we rejected Amy Wilkinson. But I just wanted to have that letter sit in the basement and represent me finally achieving what I wanted to, even if it wasn't through the avenue I thought it would be.
Okay, well, let's jump ahead. Do you feel like you can pull that letter out and be like, see, here you go?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like I don't have like a Pulitzer or anything, but I think I am a very strong working journalist at this point.
What was it like to now be away from the town you knew, the life you knew your whole life,
Sure.
and start a journey? We had mentioned the religious college. I was very sheltered. It's safe to assume you were decently sheltered as well. So going into the real world, how did that feel?
So I think the story that probably sums it up really well is that for our orientation, or I guess it was more of like a welcome reception, I would say. So it was casual. It was in, the evening or whatever. But all of the new journalism students are invited to this welcome reception. It's with the professors. It's with like department chairs. It's with all your new classmates. I got there and they were serving beer, Deanne. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to be drinking with our teachers. Because that blew my mind. Like our campus was dry. You would get in trouble if you were caught drinking. So the idea of being in an institution of higher learning and they're serving alcohol was just.
And with your teachers present.
Teachers!
Yeah.
Like hiding it. You're fully just drinking together, having a lovely adult evening. So that was like, wow, okay. I'm like not in Walla Walla anymore.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the experience at Northwestern for me as a graduate student was like 4 years of an undergraduate experience crammed into a year because it was the first time I was going to school, living away from home. I lived in an apartment. I had thought about living in the dorms there, and then I took a tour and was like, no. It was sort of like a kid in a candy store. You're just let loose for the first time. I had a really, really good time, and I learned a lot, both in the journalism program, but then just about, I don't know, things in life I probably should have known at that point, but didn't. So it felt very formative in multiple ways for me.
You've made me aware of the socioeconomic dynamic within journalism.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that and what you faced.
Sure. So I'll preface it by saying I think it's a lot better now, thankfully, for a lot of people. But when I first moved to New York, you can't really just hop into a journalism job straight out of school without at least doing an internship. Like maybe some people have been able to do that, but most of the time they want to see that you have some kind of internship in journalism before they bring you in to interview for like an editorial assistant job or a junior editor job. So at the time when I moved here, there were very, very few paid internships. Almost all of them were predominantly unpaid. And who can afford to do an unpaid internship? People who have parents who are going to pay their rent for them, who are going to help buy their food. If you're trying to be self-sufficient, you can't take a full-time internship that's unpaid unless you also plan on working an additional 8 hours a day after your internship is done to be able to afford that. Right. So I was lucky enough to find an internship at Entertainment Weekly that paid a decent rate, but I know that there were opportunities that I was interested in and would have liked to pursue that I just couldn't because I didn't have money to fall back on. And like I said, I do think it's getting better. There have been laws passed about unpaid internships. They're not really legal anymore as far as I can tell.
Especially in New York.
Yeah, but so that really sort of that barrier to entry really limits the type of people who are able to get a foot into the journalism industry, because you have to be able to support yourself to do these unpaid internships. And I have run into a lot of people who, when they hear that I grew up in this small town in Washington and my dad worked as a prison guard, they just don't understand that sort of working class life upbringing mentality. I used to sit next to a guy who played elephant polo, and I don't even know what that means. He put like polo, you know? I obviously have my own privilege that I come into in this experience, but I will say that it was a bit of a struggle to get a foot in the door because I had to take only a paid internship. And even then, for a while, when I was doing my paid internship, I was also hostessing on the weekends because I still needed more money. Like I said, I think it's getting better. And I think that's only better for journalism at large to be able to have as many different people from as many different backgrounds as possible work in this field, because you just need different perspectives than sometimes I think historically have been there.
Yeah. So how hard was it to get your foot in the door? What was the magic trick? I'm way oversimplifying, but you get my point.
So I moved to New York. I very quickly interviewed with a temp agency so that I could start temping while I was applying to internships. I will say within about 3 months, I was able to find an internship, which I think is actually like a pretty good time range.
Yeah.
But I went in to interview for an internship at Entertainment Weekly. I'd actually applied there a couple times. I don't know what the magic was to this application getting pulled out of the bin, but I went in, and I think just having a passion for both journalism and the content they cover and being very intimately familiar with the publication already maybe just helped me stand out. And so I got hired there. So I was able to quit temping at that point. But so in addition to temping, I had been hostessing at a restaurant on the Upper West Side. And I had to keep my hostessing job until I had a like mini promotion as an intern. Basically, they were short staffed. They needed somebody to do a little bit more work at a little bit higher level. So they gave me, I think I became technically like a freelancer, but I was basically a continuation of my internship, just at a slightly higher pay rate and just doing slightly more elevated things. And once I got that slight bump, I was able to quit hostessing. But I was juggling a lot of work there for a while. I was also doing a tiny bit of freelance writing as well. So it was really about trying to make ends meet until I found something that I could do and wanted to do.
How was that mentally and emotionally?
Those 3 months were definitely a little scary because at the same time, I was trying to find housing. I moved to New York with 2 suitcases and probably about $1,500 in my bank account. I just was determined to make it work. So I lived with one of my grad school friends, the one girl from grad school who preceded me getting here and already had an apartment. I lived with her for about a week. She got tired of me. And so then I had an apartment lined up as a sublet, but it wasn't going to open for another week. So I couldn't fly back to Walla Walla at that point because that made no sense financially. So I had a friend who was studying in DC, and I called her up and asked if I could just stay there on her couch for a week until my apartment opened up. She let me do that. So I went down to DC for a week, and then I came back and retrieved my suitcases from this other friend's apartment. So it was a lot of just really hustling and trying to make it work. I would say that period, though, I was so excited about everything and everything was so new that it didn't feel as anxious or anxiety inducing as it maybe would have. And it definitely didn't feel as awful as a year and a half later, which we'll probably get to, when I was completely unemployed for a year. That was the real low point. But I think I had enough like gumption, optimism, can-do spirit that those first 3 months were rough, but like doable.
As a journalist in New York, I know that's a coveted combo. Do you feel like it's rewarding? Is it everything it's worth, basically?
Hmm. That's a good question. And it maybe also depends on what particular industry in journalism you're working in and what sort of what you want out of your career. I will say you're never going to become a millionaire being a journalist unless one of your stories gets sold for movie rights. Maybe. So you really have to enjoy what you're doing because you're not going to be making bank out of doing it. But the flip side of that is there are cool perks. When I was working at MTV, for instance, I got flown out to London for this movie junket for a movie that I don't even know if anyone will remember was made, but it was a live action Jack and the Beanstalk movie. And so I was literally flown to London to attend a junket in a castle in the middle of the English countryside.
Oh my gosh.
Ewan McGregor. You know what I mean? Like those are things that like I don't think a lot of other people probably get to do in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
There's like a cool factor that comes along with it, but cool only gets you so far. You know, cool doesn't put food on the table, it doesn't pay your rent. So you have to decide what your priorities are when you work as a journalist because there's a lot of really great stuff, but it's also hard financially a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. You have been now at EW and you then landed at Bauer Publishing as senior editor.
Well,
is that right?
There was a whole year between EW and Bauer in which I did not have a job. And
here's the 12-month gap.
So it was basically all of 2009. I feel like every year that ends in 9 ends up being not a good year for me. So I've got a while until 20.
You have a little bit of runway.
I've got some time. This 9 year, I was unemployed literally and I had joked too. When I left EW, I joked to a friend. I was like, I'm going to be unemployed for the next year. And she's like, no, you'll find a job in 2 or 3 months. It'll be fine. I was literally unemployed for a full year. What happened was because I was freelancing at Entertainment Weekly, and I think also the rules or laws are slightly different about this now, but when I was a freelancer, you had a 500 hour, I think it was, cap, where you could work for about 500 hours as a freelance contract employee, and then either the company had to hire you and pay you insurance, or at least pay you insurance. It was something to do with insurance, or they just had to let you go. And oftentimes what had happened historically at EW is, and that company at large that used to own it, they would basically just send you on like 3-month hiatus. Go do whatever for 3 months. We'll wait until your freelance hours reset, and then we'll bring you back. So I left EW in January under the assumption that in 3 months they'd be calling me back and be like, hi, please come work for us again. That did not happen. And to give context, 2008, the year before, was a huge recession, right? And that did not conclude with the end of 08. That went into 09. In 09, there were very few employment opportunities, especially in journalism. And I was applying to stuff, never hearing back, and there just wasn't even a ton of stuff to apply to. So that was the year of any time that I super duper hustled. Thankfully, I did get unemployment, which helped a lot. I was also temping. So if you work a full week temping, you're not getting unemployment for that week. I think at one point I tried to crawl back to that restaurant I'd hostessed for, and they were like, no thanks, Amy. I worked a few weeks at the US Open and the Ralph Lauren store. I even, to earn literally like $10, I answered a Craigslist ad to sit in the audience of the Newlywed game show for 5 hours, which that was not worth $10. Like,
you didn't have a good time?
Why I thought I should do that. I mean, it did seem kind of cool because I'd never been to see a game show recording. So I was like, oh, this will be great. Also, at the end of the month, if I didn't have enough to pay my rent, I would write a check for what I had and just send it in and hope that my roommate, who was actually on the lease, because I sublet only in New York for the first 9 or 10 years, hoping my roommate on the lease wouldn't notice that I just hadn't fully paid rent until I could send in a second check that was like the rest of my rent payment. She was not very conscientious, and I actually did get away with that for quite a while before she. But yeah, it was just like weird things of like me trying to float around and float my finances and just trying to not get kicked out of New York, basically.
Were those days of tears?
Not tears. I'm not a huge crier, but what I will say is my defense mechanism is napping. If I'm just unconscious, I can't think about anything. So it was like a certain day where I didn't have any freelance writing. I didn't get called about a temp job. I literally just had nothing to do, and all my roommates were off at work. I would just lie on the couch and I would just let myself fall asleep.
That's rough.
Yeah, it was hard times. Finally did get that job at Bauer.
Back to Bauer. Was this the New Jersey job?
Yes.
Oh, I literally forgot about it until I asked the question, and I was like, wait a minute. There was a job where she was commuting to Jersey. What job was that?
Yeah, so I lived on the Upper East Side. I would commute to New Jersey every day. The morning commute wasn't so bad because there was actually a bus you could pick up in the morning on the Upper East Side that would take you to the bus station up in Washington Heights, where I would then grab the bus to go over into New Jersey. But that same Manhattan bus did not run in the evening. Getting home took twice as much effort. That was a fairly short-lived job. I was editing a couple different teen entertainment magazines after Tween, but after about 6 months there, they decided to lay off everyone on that staff. But this is the funny thing. I was literally concurrently interviewing for the job at MTV because I'd been freelancing for them for a couple of years, and the woman who had been running the blog that I wrote for there was moving. So I was interviewing there. So I knew I had this in my back pocket. So the minute they were like, we're laying off this staff, I ran outside and I called MTV and I was like, if you want me tomorrow, you can have me. So they're like, let us get back to you. Then simultaneous to that, HR called me in and said,
HR at Bauer.
HR at Bauer. They called me in and said, actually, one of the other magazines here wants you. So you have a job at that other magazine now. The editor-in-chief is at her desk waiting to talk to you. And Dan, my brain exploded because I was like, I can't go talk to this EIC here when I'm on the phone with MTV about trying to get a job there. What do I do? So I just sat at my desk. And this EIC literally sat catty corner to me. She could see me sitting at my desk the rest of the afternoon, and I didn't go in to meet with her at all. So finally she leaves, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, did I screw myself out of a job here? I didn't talk to her before she left. What do I do? And then finally MTV called me back at 5:45 and was like, you've got the job. So I go back to my desk at Bauer, and I emailed HR. I don't even think I CC'd the editor. I think I just emailed HR and was like, thank you for the job opportunity. I'm actually taking a job at MTV. Goodbye. But I don't think I should have told MTV, you can have me now. I'm desperate, because I don't think that helped my salary. I got a lot of really cool experiences there. Like I said, that like junket where I got to fly to London, hang out in a castle was one of them. I did go on a few set visits to cool places. It gave me the opportunity to do a little bit of traveling, a little bit of red carpet work, which I hadn't done a ton of up to that point. And the blog, because I was in a fairly male-dominated office and I was running a blog predominantly targeted towards teen girls, I was fairly autonomous in my role because I was just that subject matter expert. Let me do what I thought was best. I definitely was supervised and would be told to do certain things.
Sure. So then you moved from MTV and you landed at Entertainment Weekly as staff editor. Why did you decide to make a change?
I think I just was over the job. You know, at a certain point, you feel like you've done what you can, you've gotten out of it what you can. I loved my internship at EW, but the whole thinking I was going to get called back and never getting called back left a slight not great taste in my mouth. So I didn't actually really think returning to EW all these years later was going to happen. Somebody from that office reached out to me, but then once we got the ball rolling as far as what the job would be and all those things, I got really excited about it. When I finally did get the job, which again, this is funny, this happens to me, or did at least happen to me a lot. I was concurrently interviewing for a different job at a book blog, and they had offered me the role, and EW was still figuring out what they wanted to do. So I again put in a call being like, I'm being offered this job, but if you want me, you can have me, you know? Weird wheeling and dealing that I don't know.
It seemed like it worked in your favor. You got the role.
Yeah. I ended up getting the job, and I really loved working there. That's probably one of my career highlights. When we had to write down a list of magazines we wanted to work at when we were leaving graduate school, that was on my list. It was one of the best work experiences of my life. If there's like a theme of our conversation up to this point, it's probably that I like to be involved with people and institutions that have really great reputations. And in the entertainment space, EW was always that. It was always very well regarded. I was excited to be at this huge, well-regarded publication. And it wasn't like too upsetting to my ego to be given a staff editor position, because you have to think about scale, right? You can be a senior editor at this magazine nobody's ever heard of, or you can be a staff editor at Entertainment Weekly. It was moving forward for sure. Yeah, I felt like at that point that I was maybe even writing myself, like RIGHTING. At MTV, I was a contract employee. My title was this nebulous editor thing. So it felt like I sort of wasn't like a real girl. You know what I mean? I felt like getting now like a full-time staffed job with a title that means something, like legitimized what I was doing. Through all of the jobs I've had in New York, I've always also had a bit of a side freelance situation going.
Insert swan theory.
Right, exactly. Because like I was saying, you don't make a ton of money as a journalist. So in order to afford a New York life and to afford to maybe go on a vacation once a year, maybe, it just required that I also do freelance writing on the side. And that also gave me the opportunity to broaden my scope into other content areas. So that's when I started dabbling a little bit in health and wellness writing. And that's also when friends or former colleagues who had gone off to other magazines, like Entrepreneur, for instance, would call and be like, oh, we want to talk to this celebrity about this business they're launching, and we thought you would be a good person because you have celebrity interviews on your resume and you also have a business degree. Can you do this for us? So that started opening up different avenues for me that, again, to this day have borne fruit. But yes, I've technically been a freelance writer for the last 15 years.
For your whole career, yeah.
Whole career.
Yeah.
But now I am completely solely dedicated to freelance writing, except for teaching Pilates on the side, but that's something else. So
you're your own boss. We get it. Yeah.
Yes.
So why did you leave EW?
That was really hard. So after I'd been there for over 4 years, the editor-in-chief made the decision to move the magazine out to Los Angeles. I was offered a job in Los Angeles. I considered it. I was going to be given a raise and a promotion to go. And I crunched the numbers. And even though I was going to be getting a raise, I felt with the extra cost of living as far as needing to buy a car, buying gas, buying car insurance, I also felt like if I was going to move out to LA, that, I mean, this is like dumb, but I was sort of like, well, I don't want to live in a studio in LA. If I'm going to make a move and I'm getting this promotion and I'm getting this raise, I want to live in a 1-bedroom. All those things add up.
God forbid you want a bedroom for yourself, Amy.
No, a wall and a door. Like, who am I? And then also thinking about the people who were going and the people that I liked who weren't going, and just doing that calculus of what is this going to look like. New York had been my home for a little more than a decade, and I didn't really feel like I needed to leave. So that's when I left EW. I thankfully lucked into this contract role at Getty Images before the move even happened. This was a for sure thing I was being offered, and I should just jump on it at that moment. So I went to Getty Images, was there for maybe 7 or 8 months. I was brought on because they were launching a consumer-facing editorial property. What that basically means is Getty Image is a stock image company, and you see their photos everywhere. And if somebody hasn't actually bought the photo, then you see that Getty Image watermark on it.
Yeah.
Most of their business, or practically all of their business, is selling photos to companies. What they wanted to try to do was take this huge, amazing repository of images that they own and present them on the internet as something cool to read or something cool to look at. I was doing a lot of stuff around the royals at the time because it was right when Harry and Meghan were getting married. So I was doing galleries about, here are all the Queen's corgis, and here's all the outfits Meghan Markle's worn this week. You know what I mean? Those are actually fun.
Yeah. Who doesn't love writing about corgis?
I know. That woman has had a lot of corgis. It was fun, but this sort of like experiment of creating this consumer facing editorial property where just Joe Schmo regular would be scrolling around the internet and want to look at a gallery of the Queen's corgis, I think that eventually just didn't really align with what they wanted to be doing as a company moving forward. So that site no longer exists. So my employment there was short-lived. I continued freelancing there and then reduced my role to, I think it was 3 days a week I was going in. So because I had less work to do there, I started pursuing other freelance opportunities. And so when that site ended up going away, I already had a decent amount of work going simultaneously that I was able to then fall back on. And that brings me to today. One of my big clients at this point is Women's Health Magazine. And this harkens back to the advice about networking is always so pat and it's always so no duh. But it's so pat and so no duh because it works, right? So when I was still at Getty, I interviewed at one of the magazines owned by Hearst, which also owns Women's Health now. And I got very far in that process. But I had been an avid women's health reader since basically its inception. I loved that magazine. It was one of the ones that I constantly was sending applications to and never hearing back. I was just like sending emails into a black hole. So I didn't get that job that I interviewed for, but that editor heard that Women's Health was looking for somebody to work a couple days a week for them. She remembered me, called up Women's Health and was like, hey, I interviewed this gal, Amy. She was pretty good. Maybe she can help you out. And that's how I got the Women's Health job after literally applying to that magazine several times over a decade.
Wow.
I ended there because I had interviewed at another magazine and they recommended me. And then Women's Health called and talked to me on the phone, but I don't know if I would even characterize it as an interview. It was just like, here's the job we have. Are you interested? And I said, no. Well, I'm so thankful for that job because that in the last almost 4 years now has been my one constant. I have a lot of clients that I work with over and over and over again, but that is a guaranteed 2 days a week. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm getting paid every other week for that. And when it's dry times, I know I at least have them. That's been really fantastic to have. And I've been able to broaden even further my health and wellness writing. Basically, they brought me on to edit the celebrity cover story every month because, again, I have that background.
Looking all the way back through your career, what was the lowest point?
Definitely that year I was unemployed. It was, and we haven't gone like a ton into my financial situation. I've definitely hinted at the fact that I'm by no means a millionaire, but at that point, I was both in student loan debt and really bad credit card debt. So I was not just worried about making rent or buying food, but I was also worried about defaulting and ruining my credit and what that year of not having steady work would mean for my future going forward. Because it's not just about 2009. It's about what happens in 2009 affecting you in 2010, 11, 12, 13.
Right.
I again, was band-aiding and paper clipping and trying to make anything work. At some point, I actually had to enter one of those like debt management programs where they basically buy all your credit card debt and then you make them payments at a reduced rate. It was very stressful, and that just compounded the feeling of nobody wants to hire me. It's a lot of losses at once, I would say. To his infinite credit, my friend Dennis, at one point, I went to the grocery store to buy some groceries, and my credit card and debit card were both declined. And that was like a real low point. For a while there, he added my name to his credit card account and was like, use my credit card when you have an emergency. So that definitely saw me through as well. And I paid him back eventually.
What a good friend.
Yeah. Having people in your court to support you, even if it's not financially, but just emotionally, is so vital. And I don't know if I would be here today if it weren't for that emergency credit card that I could, buy dinner on if I needed to.
Do you have imposter syndrome, both in your work with celebrities and in your writing? Do you ever encounter it?
There are times where I read something written by somebody whose work I really appreciate and enjoy, and I think, oh, I will never be able to write like that. But that's okay, because we all communicate and write and express ourselves in different and unique ways. When I first got here, it was worse because I think I just didn't have a broad enough worldview to know what I didn't know. I remember we were sitting in one of our graduate journalism classes, and the professor asked us something about the New Yorker. Deanne, I had never read the New Yorker once in my life. I'd never even heard of the New Yorker. So I'm sitting in this journalism class, and I'm just realizing how much I don't even know about the industry that I'm pursuing a career in. I would say grad school, I felt probably a little more imposter syndrome-y. Also, especially because like I was from Walla Walla University. Nobody had heard of that. Like I had classmates who had gone to Harvard and Sarah Lawrence and all of these really amazing places. And I came from nowhere. So I think that also made me just a little anxious. And I felt like I had something to prove and that I needed to prove I belonged there.
Do you feel successful today?
Most of the time I do. If I just took a snapshot of Amy in 2022, I feel really good about what I've accomplished thus far. But I will say, just to like the other side of this story, like I mentioned, still have student loans I'm paying off. I still don't have savings. There are ways in which I feel like, oh, I'm successful in what I'm doing, but there are still components and parts of my life semi-connected to that I still don't feel like I totally have together. And maybe that's bad, or maybe that's just what I'm going to consider a work in progress at this point.
I guess the question is success a checkbox?
Sure. And to your point, is success just like one moment? Is it something to arrive at? Is it something is a spectrum? There are so many different ways to measure success. Generally speaking, I'm happy with my life and I feel contented, and I, on a day-to-day basis, am not a ball of anxiety like I was in 2009. So I will take that as a win.
If you could go back and have a conversation with your young 20-year-old self, what advice would you share?
I would tell her to cut up and burn all of her credit cards. That was such a mistake. And I knew it was a mistake. Financial literacy was not something that was strongly taught in my family. And I do remember as a kid, my mom pretty much always being in some form of credit card debt. And I remember even as a kid or a teenager telling myself, Amy, you can never get a credit card. And then in college, I went on a trip to London for school. And I thought, I need to have a credit card for emergencies in case who knows what happens in London. And that was a real slippery slope, my friend. And even today, I still have some credit cards. I still use them more than I should. Going into graduate school with all of that credit card debt, and then incurring more debt in graduate school, and then moving to New York and not having a super well-paying job, that's just a snowball. So if I could go back to the beginning and really reiterate, no, you cannot get a credit card, I think I would.
All right. So rapid fire. How do you define success?
The cheesy answer is, I think a life of success is one in which you feel happy and content.
Dream job as a child.
I wanted to be a private investigator. I'm really good at finding information on the internet.
What's your path not taken?
I think it's that advertising career. There's definitely a part of me that wonders, oh, could I be working on Madison Avenue now?
If you could switch jobs with anyone?
I think it would be really cool to work with food somehow. Don't know if I would be a chef because that's not like super in my wheelhouse, but I love food. And I think if there were a career that I could do that was centered around food, I think that'd be super cool.
Remote or in-person work?
Oh, now that I'm a freelancer, I'm super into remote.
Word that drives you nuts?
I don't like the word crotch. Something that I'm like, I don't need to think about it. But also just the mouthfeel of the word crotch. It's just not a fun word to say.
What actor would you have play you in a movie?
Oh my. I had somebody tell me one time that I reminded them of Julianne Moore. And I was like, I will take that.
That's nice.
Yeah, let's say Julianne Moore.
What employer has gotten you the most opportunities?
Oh, I would say Entertainment Weekly, because I can sit down and think about all of the former coworkers I had there, where they've gone now, and I can chart the tree of all the work they've given me at all of their other publications since they left EW. And it's a little mind-boggling.
Final question. If you were to think of all of your jobs and you had to choose 3 and label them love, ultimate fun, infatuation, or skip.
Since we didn't actually name the place that we were interns in Florida, I'm gonna call that one skip.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Love, I would say EW. I really loved working there. And then the other category you said is ultimate fun. TV by and large was pretty fun. I had a ton of just like really cool coworkers, and I got to do a lot of fun things there, like random weird things that I probably will never be paid to do again. So I'll give MTV that one.
Amy, thank you so much for doing this podcast. It's tremendous. Your journey is certainly something that needs to be shared. And I want to normalize the career journey, and that it's not perfect success, that it takes a lot of hard work and anguish and all the other words you want to use to describe. So thank you so much. And credit card debt. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and open. And I'm just so thrilled to have spent this time with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Deanna. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reinert. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and/or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.